we live with the implications of climate change. They're already there. They're affecting us. Be it droughts, be it wildfires, rising sea levels, impact on our biodiversity. This is something which is happening today. It's not going to happen in a few years. You just look at the horrible fires in Australia. The magnitude, the scale of destruction, it's mind-boggling. We're actually sending our elite teams to Australia today in response to a call for help made by the Australian government. But we've seen what these wildfires can actually do, and we need to protect ourselves the best possible way in terms of revamping our civil protection and making sure that we contain the damage. But of course, if we don't have an aggressive approach vis-a-vis climate change in general, things will get much worse. And I've been at the forefront of pushing for a new growth model that puts sustainability and addressing climate change at the very center of what we want to do with the country. We've put forward a very aggressive plan to move away from lignite, dirty coal, which is the most polluting form of fossil fuel. So we're shutting down all our lignite plants, the latest by 2028 and all but one by 2023. And of course, we're looking for European assistance to make sure that the one region of Greece which is very dependent on lignite mining is not faced with severe economic implications for this decision. That's why we've set up what we call a Just Transition Fund within the European Union to support regions that will be faced with the challenge of making this transition sooner rather than later. And of course, we have a vision of a country where renewable energy is going to be the main source of energy production. We have the advantage of having access to unlimited wind and in particular solar power, and we will very aggressively push towards that direction. At the same time, we're looking to partially privatize our distribution grids, because we need investments also in our grids to be able to support this transition. So we have a very complete plan regarding energy transition, and of course a very clear vision of where we want to take the country going forward on this topic. And I've been a big supporter of the new Green Deal proposed by the new President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen. It's an ambitious plan, but now we also need to make sure that we have the proper financing tools to implement it. One of the most difficult discussions at the European Union level we will have in 2020 regards the next European budget. And I've also made it very clear that you cannot implement these policies without the necessary financial tools. So, the big countries need to step up to the plate and accept the fact that we need a bigger budget at the European level if we want to do climate policy in the right way, and if at the same time we want to maintain agricultural policy and cohesion policy, which are the two non-negotiable pillars for many European countries as far as the European budget is concerned. So expect some interesting discussions regarding the European budget in 2020. But what we're doing is we're certainly stepping up to the plate. And by stepping up to the plate, we also publicly state our claim that we want to be one of the first countries to have access to the Just Transition Fund. Other countries tell us that they want to keep their coal mines open forever. I don't see any reason why they should benefit from a just transition mechanism if they still want to burn coal. But a country that is taking the bold decision to shut down all its coal mines by 2023 should be supported by the European Union as we manage that transition. Now, on the second question, I've spoken many times on this issue. I will not add anything beyond what I've said. It's an issue to be addressed by justice. I will repeat what I said. It will be very good if this issue finally comes to an end, and we give closure to a saga that very honestly has not done Greece has not helped Greece's international reputation, but my job is not to intervene in any open judicial process, and I'm not going to do it now.
Let me take a couple more questions. This gentleman here has been waiting, so let's see if I can get the mic to him. And please, we'll come to the ambassador here in the front as well.
My name is Henri Baki. I'm from the Council on Foreign Relations in Lehigh University. My question is about the refugee crisis, or the potential refugee crisis that you may face as the situation in Idlib deteriorates and more refugees go to Turkey. President Erdogan has threatened to allow refugees to go essentially west to Europe. Is Greece ready, capable to handle these refugees? How would you stop them? You have all these islands which are easy to get to. So essentially, could you talk a little bit about the refugee crisis?
The key issue. Let me take this young woman here, and please then to the front row for the ambassador. Please go ahead. Go ahead.
Hi, good morning. My name is Sofia Ikonomopoulou, and I work for General Electric. I wanted to know if you could address the issue of brain drain and the young Greeks who have left and what you're doing to bring them back. I have friends all over, and we're all kind of scattered everywhere, and you know, it would be nice to hear what your plans are for the future. Thank you.
Important question. Please, sir.
Damon, thank you very much. Mr. Prime Minister, thank you very much for your remarks, and indeed congratulations on your remarkable successes. And for us, the Croats, at this moment, having just assumed the EU presidency, it's beautiful to see the year opening here in Washington with the European success story, which is Greece. Congratulations on that. My question also is related to the migration crisis, as aforementioned by the colleague. Clearly, this is something we face, and this is some of the critical issues we all have to deal with. We are feeling the pressure. Obviously, Greek is, in a sense, at the front line. What are and what may be the policies, the specific policies Greece which to pursue, which to enact as European policies in that regard, because this is a clear case in which no single country can deal it alone. But again, it's great to have you here with us.
Thanks to the Ambassador of Croatia. We'll take those three, Mr. Prime Minister.
Well, let me first address the refugee question, because it is a very important one. And this is clearly a problem with a global, but also very clearly a European dimension. It cannot be solved by Greece alone. And I've been making the claim repeatedly that unless Europe gets its act together, there's going to be a new fault line that risks, ripping Europe apart on the migration issue, and that is something which we should not accept. You cannot have a Schengen zone of free movement of people while at the same time not have common asylum policies and a coherent policy on how to protect your external borders. So I'm really looking forward to the European Commission presenting its new migration pact, its views on how we can reach the point of having a common asylum rules and common agreement on how we manage our external borders. It is very, very unfair to place all the burden on the countries that constitute the external border of the European Union, and then pretend as if this problem only relates to Italy or Greece or Spain or Cyprus. So we have not been very good at showing the necessary European solidarity on that front. Having said that, to get to the first question, I cannot afford as Prime Minister of Greece to wait for the European Union to come up with a coherent answer to this problem. So we need to look at the situation we're facing on the ground and make sure that we take all the necessary initiatives at our level. What have we done? We've changed our asylum policy, so we changed the asylum legislation, and as of January 1st, we've really tightened the process. We need the asylum applications to be processed much, much quicker than they have in the past. And for all of those whose application is declined, they need to be sent back to Turkey, according to the EU-Turkey statement, which is, in spite of its problems, it's still, the only coherent agreement that we have with Turkey, and we need to work upon it, we need to build upon it, and we need to improve it. At the same time, we're facing lots of pressures on our islands, so we have to take the decision, although that was not my first choice, to move some people, especially the more vulnerable people, off the islands and into the mainland. But at the same time, we're also increasing the capacity of the islands to welcome refugees and migrants by building new facilities where we will monitor who comes in and who comes out. We're looking at the role of NGOs. Most of the NGOs have been very supportive in terms of what we do, but also some of them have not been particularly supportive and sort of are undermining, the policies implemented by the Greek government. And of course, we're also strengthening our Coast Guard. And the Greek Coast Guard is doing a fantastic job in a very, very difficult situation in protecting our borders, but also in saving lives at sea. So we're adding additional boats, and we're strengthening our presence on the frontier. And we make it very, very clear that our Coast Guard will save anyone who is at risk of drowning at sea, but we're not a welcoming committee. We're not a tourist agency. The job of the Coast Guard is to protect the borders of the country. And I've made that very, very clear. And I'm also sending a very clear signal to the smugglers and to those who take advantage of the pain and suffering of these people. This is a different ball game. Starting, the beginning of this year, if you send people to Greece who do not have refugee status, be assured that these people will be sent back. So you're essentially wasting your money. I'm telling to the people who actually pay the smugglers to come to Greece, knowing that they don't have refugee status. We will do everything in our capacity to send them back to Turkey. Now, to the question which is very dear to my heart, and thank you very much for asking this question regarding brain drain. 450,000 approximately young Greeks left the country during the crisis in search for better jobs or in search for jobs abroad. And it was very painful for the people who had to leave. Of course, there are always people who choose to leave, and in a globalized world, that's good. But there are lots of people who had to leave because they couldn't find a job in Greece. The brain drain needs to be reversed. 2 points on how this could happen. First of all, the brain drain will be reversed once we have more jobs, better paying jobs, and more opportunities in Greece. You work for GE. I'm sure you would be happy to return to Greece provided that Greece offers you a decent, good paying job. So we need jobs, and we also need to lower taxation and social security contributions on higher incomes because a lot of these jobs are good paying jobs which were massacred by the policies of the previous government in terms of taxation and social security contributions. So my commitment has been that once I gain additional fiscal space, and I will be able to do that in 2020, that we will start reducing what we call the solidarity surcharge, which was another additional tax imposed in particular on high income earners. And by revamping our social security system, we will also reduce social security contributions for employees like yourself who'd be looking to come back to Greece to find a job. The other option which is open now in Greece, which is very interesting, is a career in entrepreneurship. One of the most fascinating things that happened during the crisis was this emergence of a new entrepreneurial culture where young Greeks suddenly realized that at a time when they could no longer get a job with the state and bang on the doors of a politician to help them through the old traditional rules of clientelistic and patronage politics, starting a business makes lots of sense. So we've seen a lot of interest in people setting up their own companies with a vibrant startup culture in Greece. We're doing everything in our capacity to support it. And of course, for those people who have succeeded abroad, this is a point I always make to the, especially to the vibrant Greek American community here. Why have you succeeded here? Because you have a culture of free entrepreneurship, relatively low taxes, and regulation which is not too intrusive. We want to replicate the same culture in Greece. The other aspect which I consider very important, which is particularly relevant to your generation, is the fact that we finally succeeded in giving you the right to vote from where you actually live. And that is very, very important because it connects the diaspora with Greece. We have not been able to do it to the extent that we wanted. but because of necessary compromises, we had to get to a supermajority of 200 MPs in order to introduce this legislation. It's a constitutional constraint which we have, but what we have managed to legislate covers the entire brain gain generation. So you'll be able to vote from where you actually live without having to return to Greece to do so. This will increase, I think, the level of political participation. And finally, you will return to Greece not just when you get a good job, but also when you really believe that the country has turned the corner. So there's a case to be made about the long-term prospects of the country. No one, myself, I had made this decision in '97 to return. It was not just about the job. It was about my belief that the country was moving in the right direction and that we've left the crisis behind us for good. Nobody in the right frame of mind would return to Greece only to believe that they will find themselves in the situation where they would have to leave again after a couple of years. So that's why I insist in all of us sharing the narrative that we've actually turned the corner, that we left the crisis behind us for good, and that the better years are ahead of us in the long term, not just in the short term. And that, I think, will give us the possibility to attract talented people who have left, have them return to Greece. I would also stress here one aspect which I didn't touch upon, and that is the fantastic work that we're doing in education and research and development. We're opening up new partnerships, educational partnerships with top American universities, creating new opportunities for research in Greece. We have all the abilities to make Greece a regional educational center. For the first time, our Greek public universities are offering English-speaking courses in areas where I think everyone would be excited to study in Greece, classics, archaeology, history, yet these courses were never offered. So there's a small revolution taking place also within our universities, and that, I think, is also going to be particularly important to your generation.
Mr. Prime Minister, this is an optimistic note to end on. So before we conclude, let me just say two quick things. I think you've made a compelling case that Greece has turned the corner. I'm going to ask that everybody remain seated when the Prime Minister leaves with his delegation. But I want to just close by saying we've had a very measured conversation today, a very sober, serious conversation about important issues. And yet it's against the backdrop, as Fred began with, of really turbulent, sometimes chaotic times. And I think your leadership, Mr. Prime Minister, has been one of reassurance. It's making the case of Greece having turned the corner. And it's quite remarkable against the context, as you yourself mentioned, of backlashes in democracies all across the West. And yet you've had a sweeping victory at the ballot box on a platform of structural reform and political stability. And I think we want to thank you here at the Atlantic Council and with our family for being a champion of the U.S.-Greek relationship. And for our part at the Atlantic Council, we will be a champion of building and bolstering that relationship for the future. Please join me in thanking the Prime Minister for your remarks today and wishing you luck on your visit. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you for a remarkable conversation. Let me ask if you remain, and the Prime Minister will exit here through the side.